Find me.
Good evening. I'm Bryce Rosenblum, founder of Winter Jazzfest. We started 17 years ago at the Knitting Factory down in Tribeca, and 18 groups played on 3 different stages. It was an incredible night, and it was just the beginning. Throughout the years, we expanded with more venues and more days, expanded the audience. We developed artists and an audience for this music. Our mission really matured to kind of a three-tier approach of showcasing new talent that we thought deserved more attention, nurturing audiences, growing audiences every year, and aligning with messages of social justice, which of course has been ever so important these past few years. Sadly, of course, this year we cannot all be together, so we are here together digitally. We are yet still committed to bringing us together around this music, topics of this music, expanding our jazz community, showcasing new voices, and we intend to continue to be a beacon aligning message of social justice into our programming. We miss all the faces, all the musicians, the venues, of course, and the energy that the festival brings to the streets of New York. We miss the hang. For continuity's sake, we are proud to bring us together in this digital space for programming this year. Tonight kicks off the series. We have programs continuing this week and into February and March. Please check out winterjazzfest.com for more programming, more events that we're going to bring to you and other things that have not yet been announced. So stay tuned. This week, we're excited to continue the series tomorrow evening with a partnership with the New School Jazz Department and the Berklee Institute for Jazz and Gender Studies, Jazz and Gender Justice, for our annual Winter Jazz Fest Jazz and Gender Talk Series. Tomorrow evening, it will feature Terry Lynn Carrington, Maureen Mahon, Samora Pinder Hughes, and moderated by Faye Victor, hosted by Sarah Elizabeth Charles. On Friday, we are proud to collaborate with Summer Stage on a Martin Luther King Jr. tribute called Marching On, celebrating the life and legacy of MLK Jr. That is presented in association with Summer Stage and the People's History of the United States. That will feature Lakeisha Benjamin and Brandy Younger, Mahogany Brown, C. Anthony Bryant, Linda LaBeija, Ty Jones, Diva Mahal, and hosted and narrated by Naima Sandy, who you will meet momentarily. I also want to say that this year has brought a lot of challenges for us, yet silver linings too. I'm proud to have been a part of a group called Jazz Coalition that has raised money for jazz musicians. We created a commission fund and we raised over $100,000 to date, and more is coming in. We commissioned 100 artists with creative grants to create work responding to these times. We'll be rolling out those pieces as they come in. But I'd like to encourage you, since we all can't be together and support the venues and the musicians right now at Winter Jazz Fest. Winter Jazz Fest is encouraging you as a supporter of this music to support Jazz Coalition so we can continue and grant musicians to stay active, remind them of their value and worth, and create music, more music that represents these momentous, interesting times we're in. Without further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to Naima Sandy, and she will welcome our esteemed guests. And thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure. And 1 second. Naima, hi.
Oh. You have to unpin yourself. Or pin me. I'll just introduce myself. Hello to everybody in the chat. Shout out to you for joining us this evening. Thank you so much to Bryce for inviting me to collaborate with you for this season of Winter Jazz Fest. Of course, Winter Jazz Fest has been a hallmark for so many people of each new year for the last 17 years. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with you on this and many other things. Again, my name is Naima Sophia Sandy. I'm a New York born and based curator, musician, and many other things. If you know me, you know that many other things is a lot of hyphens and such. I just want to share with you what we're doing here this evening. So this conversation series is called Fertile Grounds, really meant to be a widening of the field and thinking about creativity in a manner that is something that touches everybody. And so how can we have conversations that really open that up and fully engage different audiences, whether that's jazz musicians, painters, uh, film directors, and et cetera, to really just have conversations about what inspires us all. Because of course, this is a moment where inspiration is something that we need, possibly more than ever before. So I have the immense pleasure this evening of introducing two artists for this first version of this conversation, Nate Lewis and Kassa Overall. Nate Lewis is a multidisciplinary artist working within sculpted images, works on paper, sound, and video. He explores history and ideas through meditative lamenting and celebratory language that engages a rhythmic interplay of dense patterns, textures, and stress materials to create ethereal, anatomically imaginative constructions that reimagine the human form and other symbolic imagery. He earned a bachelor's degree in nursing from VCU, working as a critical care nurse for nearly a decade before pursuing a career as a full-time professional artist. Lewis's work has been exhibited at Friedman Gallery, David Kordansky Gallery, the California African American Museum, the Studio Museum of Harlem, the Yale Center for British Art, 21C Museum Hotels, with the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Service as well. Past residencies include Art on the Vine in Martha's Vineyard, Pioneer Works in Brooklyn, and Diadun also in Brooklyn. Lewis's work is in public collections of the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Studio Museum in Harlem, Grinnell College Museum of Art, the Blanton Museum of Art, the University of Texas at Austin, the JP Morgan Collection, and more. He has lectured at Yale University as part of Claudia Rankine's Racial Imaginary Institute, at the Yale Center for British Art, and at Paris Photo. Lewis currently lives and works in New York. Can folks in the chat let me know if you can see me real quick? Because I can't see myself. Yes? Fantastic. Nate, can you turn your camera on? All right, Kassa. So glad you were able to join us this evening. Kassa Overall is a jazz musician, MC, singer, producer, and drummer, a product of New York City's jazz scene who melds an avant-garde experimentation with hip hop production techniques to tilt the nexus of jazz, hip hop into unmapped directions, reflecting a panoramic musical background from West Coast G-funk to the sounds of the New York underground. In the past 2 years, Overall has released 3 critically acclaimed projects: Go Get Ice Cream and Listen to Jazz in 2009, I Think I'm Good, which was released in February 2020, followed shortly thereafter by Shades of Flu, which was released in May 2020, a quarantine mixtape loosely inspired by Madlib's Shade of Blue. Whatever the experiment, Overall remains faithful to the pocket of jazz drums in the tradition of his mentors, the late Elvin Jones and Billy Hart, with whom he studied at the Oberlin Conservatory of Music. Overall has been working at the forefront of jazz for 2 decades, touring and recording as a sideman drummer with artists as varied as Jerry Allen, Steve Coleman, Francis and the Lights, Yoko Ono, Peter Evans, Carmen Lindy, and Gary Bartz. His work as a producer can be heard on albums by Theo Croker, Otto Lindsay, and Das Racist. He's also featured as an MC and DJ on drummer Terry Lynn Carrington, who will join us tomorrow. Latest project, Social Science, a project for which he received a Grammy nomination. Raised in Seattle, Washington, Overall attended Garfield High School, the alma mater of Quincy Jones and Jimi Hendrix. He's currently based in Brooklyn, but you are joining us from Seattle right now, aren't you?
Yes, indeed.
Beautiful. Thank you both so much for joining us. I appreciate you accepting my invitation. So I was like, Nate would be great. I feel like he wants to talk to Kassa. Let's see it from Nate. And he will. So, I'm so excited to hear just the beautiful conversation you're going to have with each other this evening. And again, to just sort of frame this for both of you as well as for our audience, what I'm really attempting to do is think about how imagination, introspection, and ingenuity of artists is not just about jazz. It's about all of these ways that creativity touches our lives and sort of makes us have to make work. And whatever that medium you choose is where the interesting magic things start to happen. So
Mhm.
just wanted to hear from you too. And I'm so happy that you're joining us. And I'm going to stop talking and give you to the floor.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Naam. It's so important and so really awesome to have somebody like Nyama who really, just spans so many different disciplines and understands so much of the important culture, that's present. I mean, I'm sure there's more, but I think it's just very important to connect the worlds because so many people, I don't know, I think it can get missed often, and Nyama is amazing in connecting them. So thank you, Nyama.
You're very kind, Nate. Thank you.
Feel free to chime in or hang out or whatever. It's casual.
Yeah.
I
If you-
purposely don't really want
Casual
to
Wednesday.
be in this conversation. I really want the two of you to talk to each other. I might like pop up like, hey, I have a thought.
like, yo, that's not right. Hold up. You could feel free
We,
to call me out if you're
you
not.
know, we don't know each other that well yet, but I would definitely do that. Like 100%.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna go for now. And
Okay.
I'm so excited. Enjoy.
So yeah, first off, drink more water. Um,
Absolutely. We got to stay healthy on these streets.
Off top, I realize that I spend a lot of time like trying to figure out the right herbs to take and smoothies to make, and then I'll be like, I'm not even drinking water though.
Number
So
one. Number one.
it don't matter if you don't drink water first. But I might
Listen,
have I might have to go. You know what I mean?
it's the
That's,
most simplest things.
yeah.
Simplicity often leads us in the right directions.
Um, but yo, I was gonna say before we even get into any like thoughts I've been thinking about or you've been thinking about, I was thinking
Yeah.
about something when she was talking, and I feel like I have this thought about art or making stuff, and it almost as like a method of survival. You know what I mean? Rather than
Mm,
whether even if you want to get past saying like, oh, I'm a jazz musician or a musician or artist or whatever, it's like I feel like the way that people go to the gym, you know what I mean? Like the way like you have NBA basketball players or whatever, you have professional athletes, but then everybody knows that working out is probably good for you. For most people it's beneficial, you know what I mean? And
right.
I feel like making some type of art, figuring out how to express yourself, how to channel life into another thing and see it, come into fruition is like almost just as important as going to the gym. And I feel like I wish people, or I hope, or maybe, we will kind of grow that way to where it's not like, oh, I'm not gonna make this song because I might not get no plays or I might not get like a deal or whatever. It's like, man, it's
Absolutely.
yeah. So
No,
that's just
I completely agree with that, man. That's a really good point. Um, and I guess I think about it like I just started playing the piano. I bought a piano
right.
over quarantine,
I remember.
and I hopped in and just what just I would just go off and just be playing for like 4 hours, just finding my groove.
Yep.
And it's an adventure. It really is. It's an adventure, and and it just taps into a different part. I mean, of your mind, but it really taps into the spirit. You
Hmm.
know, and it's meditative, but it's very nourishing. Really,
Especially something that you're beginning at. You know what I mean? It's like when you're still a baby in the path or whatever it is, you really can be like it's just like this whole universe of like discovery. But it's
discovery.
sometimes it takes a little bit of sometimes you got to get outside of your head because you can step into a field like I know if I try to sit down and draw something or something, a lot of times these thoughts, I have these thoughts in my head like, yo, I'm so trash at this, and I stop. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah,
it's a bit of a mind game to get out
I
the.
think I think with that, like thinking about you drawing, it's like I think you have to. I think that's the thing. I think it's the same thing with music. Like you want to try to draw something, but it's like, well, you can draw what you want. You know what I mean? And you can find the language. That you have to to make something, and it doesn't have to be this specific thing that you're trying to draw. You know what I mean? I think that's the exciting part about not knowing how to do something the way that it's supposed to be done. I think that's where that freedom is, to use what you have, whatever, pulling on how you understand visuals or how you understand sound, and bringing that
Yeah,
visual, and then you could look at it that way, and then you can bring your strengths to it.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
real.
that's
That's real. Cool,
that's I mean,
bro.
yeah.
Talk to you later, man. Uh, yo, I got a question for you. It's not
What's
a
up?
question, but it's like I'm gonna tell you one of your quotes that I thought was really dope, and I
Okay.
feel like especially right now in today's in the time we're in right now, it's like
Yeah.
it just some like quotes from the past are like when you read them right now in 2021, it's like damn, you know what I mean? Like when
Right.
when the heat is on, things read different, But you said interacting with images is an act of care.
Yeah.
Explore and question the history of the subject, mirroring the abilities of diagnostic lenses in my own language, and seeing and listening. The textures and patterns I create resonate with the rhythms and sounds I listen to. So like that quote, it kind of I guess the reason that quote was dope was it talks about it's like this kind of like listening, creating as listening, and also like being careful with the stuff you're dealing with. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I guess that, it partly comes from, definitely, I guess, through what my practice started from, which is like, um, I guess when I had a breakthrough, like working with paper, and that's when I was still working in the hospital, and it's sculpting into the paper.
hmm
um, and it's quite, I mean, I go at it in like a very surgical approach,
right,
and because of where I was in that time, in the hospital taking care of people, that's all I was thinking about, was just caring. So I was just bringing that to paper as well,
yeah,
and then I started working with images. So then when you're working with something, an image printed on the paper, and it brings a different level, a different weight of even, what you're doing, and depending on, what you're working with, you can show that, but
yeah,
yeah, I guess the listening and the sound is, I I think the first way I started, understanding, I guess, art, the closest to it is through sound and textures. I mean, my work is like primarily, it's imagery, but it's, I like texture more than anything, you know,
right.
and it's like trying to accomplish, trying to mirror the textures that I hear in sound, and like, and bring them visually,
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like you got to see me perform hella times, and
Many.
and I haven't gotten to see you perform per se. You know what I mean? But like I've checked out your work, and I've been to a like a opening, or all that.
Yeah, that,
It's weird.
yeah,
It's like I
yeah,
almost feel like it's like you got to see me in action, right? And it's like What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so whenever I would talk to you after, it's like you would be inside the music in a way that was like almost surprising as someone who wasn't a quote unquote musician. You know what I mean? Like you would talk to me on some like, yo, you're doing this now or you're doing that. Like they gave you this, but now you're going here, and it would be like somebody who was really inside the music. You know what I mean? And I always was like, I note that. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it seems like people don't see some of the deeper uh, grooves, so to speak. You know,
Right, right.
and
Yeah, man.
you do you see those deeper grooves? You know the language of it.
Absolutely. I've probably seen you play more than, more than most people for sure. And really, it's been really awesome to see, to see you grow and to see you see see you grow in your craft and even just see you grow in like in taking chances with what you're doing, really. I think the first time I saw like you sing, it was something I don't remember what track it was, but I think it was from your second album, maybe third one, or yeah, I think it was it might have been I Think I'm Good, but it might have been the first one. But you sang without any like, without any auto tune, without any electronics, to change your voice. I was like, oh, whoa, that was big. I know that was big for you, and I was just like, wow, he just continually digs in deep, and just goes for it. It was really awesome.
But I probably came off stage like, oh man, I gotta go learn how to sing for real now. You know what I mean? But you're
No, it
right
was,
though. It's kind of like sometimes you gotta, in order to even motivate yourself, you gotta kind of go out there and do it. And then
yeah,
like once you go out there and do it, then you can go like, well, shit, I'm doing it now. So you know what I mean?
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. But
another.
yeah,
Oh, go
go
ahead. Go ahead.
ahead. Nah,
I,
you go, you go.
I was gonna say another thing that's interesting, and this kind of relates to actually the process in visual art, which is like sometimes I'll make a song or I'll have an idea in my head cooking, and
Hmm.
then I'll muster up the courage to make the idea, especially if the idea is something that's like, it's usually like the best stuff is when I'm actually dealing with some stuff, you know, and I'll go and make the song and I'll write it and then I'll muster up the courage to record it. And the interesting thing about it is once I record the song, because I put out music at this point for a while, once I record the song, I know that like if it's a good song, I'm gonna put this out, and then I'm gonna have to say this all over the world. You know, you know what I mean? It's like, and it's like you can. It's easier to make it like I'm here in the basement. I can make a song about anything, and not necessarily like deal with spreading that out into the world. So it's like it's almost like this process of like creating a thing and then sharing it. But sometimes when you're making a thing, you can like stop yourself from making the thing because you gotta share the thing, and it's like it's this weird like it's almost like a weird game I play with myself where I'm like if it's something that I'm scared to make, then I gotta make it. You know what I mean?
I got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, listening to your albums, I'm like to add to that. I'm so blown away by how each song is so different. But even to think of going from your first the go get ice cream, listen to jazz to I think I'm good. Um, it's I'm just like, wow, like you really continually challenge yourself in I guess just in the most ways, really. Listening to the album, I'm just like, it's like, I mean, it feels like a non-genre. A lot of the songs feel like a non-genre to me, really. It's difficult to be like, oh, this is this is this is this, this is that. Um, And it really, I think that's why that's why I, enjoy your music so well and your artistry, because you're really understanding how to develop, your own sound and your own imprint. And, it's interesting to think of like what your sound is, because you don't you don't give yourself boundaries. I mean, not you don't give yourself boundaries. You do give yourself boundaries, of course you do. But they feel like they're pretty open,
Yeah.
in terms of how you want to go at it. And it's like that's part of your imprint. But obviously there's something. I know there's definitely more of a fingerprint throughout your pieces that make them yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, and this is something I noticed with you, is like you don't have boundaries based on like a already defined thing. You know, it's not like a specific type of visual artist. You know, like it seems like you're growing towards more and more multi verses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And trying to like find new ways to express yourself. But then like you create your own boundaries. It's almost like unrelated to the past or like what the exact form is defined as. But I noticed like one of the first times I talked to you and we sat down and was talking about making some stuff, and I would suggest something kind of randomly, like, well, what if we made it blue or whatever, and you had these very particular, like, well, no, I wouldn't want to do that because that doesn't go with this, and it was like these kind of little rules, right? But it
Right.
wasn't. It was like your own thing. It wasn't really based on the past, so to
No.
speak, but just your own, what you felt was righteous in that moment. You know what I mean?
It is, and I have, yeah, my boundaries have been super tight. I mean, they started with using just a white sheet of paper and just a blade and just creating all these different textures out of that. And then it
Yeah.
moved on to black and white photos, and then I started adding ink, and I keep adding things. And what I realize is, I mean, I thrive in boundaries. I thrive in boundaries,
Right. Right. Right.
but also
My bad.
like you, I like to challenge myself. And it's interesting. I'm challenging myself by keeping this tight boundary,
Right.
continually continually developing a unique language within it, and you seems like you thrive by having by bringing all of these different worlds of music together
Yeah.
and keeping it like that. But what I realized as time goes on and more, and especially because I started, I got Ableton, and I was making some tracks over this break, for the first time. And what I realized is sound is the most, to me, it seems like it's the most malleable form of art,
Yeah.
and you can control it to the to the molecule. You can it's so easy to move. It's so malleable. It's like, okay, what do you want to do with this? And that's why I think about, textures and language that I'm creating my work like sound. And that's why with
Yeah.
sound, like you can do it. It's there.
Hey, I gotta cut you off for a second. I gotta take
Yeah.
a pee so bad. Is Nyama still here? Come back in 2 seconds. I gotta go pee, so I'm gonna just do it. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm shopping with that, but I would you gotta keep it theatrical.
I
You
might
gotta
be
keep it
laughing
theatrical.
most of the time he's gone though.
He gotta keep it theatrical. I mean, that's
That was
I mean,
great.
that's how his performances feel. For real. For real. I'm always blown away by his performances. He keeps it fun, keeps it unexpected. So you gotta
So I think we have several parents in the audience tonight.
Uh-oh. Oh, we got moms up. All
Shout
right.
out to your mom. I'm not. I
God,
think
Dad.
Kassa's.
What's up, mom?
Um, so Nate, I actually should have asked you to prepare a couple of slides of work. I feel like you shared some things with me. I don't know if you're ready to share with the people. See, he's back.
Oh, just share some work?
Man,
Yeah, I can share. Oh, he back?
You back already? You back so soon?
y'all was getting
Actually,
used to me being gone.
there was a question in the chat from Nate's mom, actually, about whether you two have collaborated. I think you were sort of on the cusp of beginning to talk about that.
Yeah.
So
So I had this series in 2019 called Time Capsule, sponsored by the Jazz Gallery. And so the concept was to record like 6 performances and take all of those performances and chop them up for like a final performance. So kind of a repurposing audio to make new pieces. And I reached out to Nate to see if he wanted to be involved, and it ended up being kind of the perfect pairing because the way he approaches what he does. So I'll let him talk about what he did, but it was amazing. It was our first time doing anything together, but it kind of opened up a whole connection. So yes.
Yeah, yeah. So what I did, I went to all of the performances, listened to all the performances, and took photos at all of the performances. And I took the photos and I put them on just like on Photoshop, and created a montage of all the different, or just not a montage really, just created a scene of all of the different, a handful of the different elements, the different musicians that were there. And when I took the photos, I just used like a very uh, a slow, yeah, like a slower imagery, just so I could get movement within it and get blur within it, and then put it in Photoshop, and created a scene with the different elements. So I was just kind of trying to channel the ideas that he was thinking about, with connecting jazz, connecting hip hop, and just kind of like essentially just making it look like, almost like a time, almost like a time travel
Yeah, it was.
between the elements, really. And
Lauren
then I
said
sculpted
the
in
final
it,
piece was fire, by the way.
like what I do, sculpting into the paper, into the work, which kind of, when you sculpt into the paper, and distress it, it ends up looking like different textures and different elements of distress that added an actual tactility to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it was crazy. And yeah, Lauren said the final piece was fire. And it is. It's actually upstairs right now in this house. Can you hear me, Nate?
Yeah, yeah, I hear you, absolutely.
Yeah. That was wild, man. And it was definitely it was just like a long journey too. It was kind of the first like long form project, and to see you there every time, and you really got in tune with what I was doing, and we had a lot of conversations throughout that process. And
Yeah,
I learned a lot, man. Definitely.
yeah, that
Def-
was awesome to be a part of that. And then he was part of at my first New York City exhibition, which was back in March. I worked with Kassa and 4 other of my favorite musicians, and I had them commission them to make a track, um, based off of the prompt for my show, and it was an immersive sound installation. We had speakers throughout the whole gallery, and then I put all of their music and made a track, um, like a 25-minute long track that incorporated elements of all of the musicians and different elements. So it was like this soundscape that moved throughout the gallery. It was really amazing. But yeah, so I got a question. I got a question for you.
What?
So yeah, so you know, your first album, Go Get Ice Cream, listen to jazz, and I'm thinking good. I feel like you know, I feel like from the first album to the second album, I feel like I'm curious if like when you made that second album, it was like were you able to, because it just, the second album felt even more like a non genre. It felt like you were more comfortable, it you know, in bringing these, in bringing different sounds and bringing different genres together. Like it felt like you were more comfortable with just like letting your voice flourish.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious if when you made that album, were you could you have made that album like when you made that first one, or did your vision grow, you know, did what you wanted to do change, or was it just like, okay, like you could have made that album when you made the first one, but like you just got the courage to be like, all right, I'm just gonna put, you know, this
Right. I would say both. Like, I don't think I could have made the second one without first making the first one, as far as just uh creative growth, you know what I mean? And also, like,
right,
there was a lot of learning involved with making the first one. So, like, after I made the first one, there were things that I wasn't fully satisfied with, even if we're just talking about sonic quality or whatever, you know what I mean? So it was like, when I do the
right,
next one, I'm gonna make sure, you know, I hit them with A, B, and C. So, but
right,
then a lot of it was definitely courage, you know, and I think that when I put out Ice Cream album, I was just coming off of like touring as a sideman, as like my primary focus, you know what I mean, and playing gigs. And so I had a lot of that like in my system, as far as like, let me make something that is still that person, you know, that is still that jazz drummer, but also mixes in this other thing, you know. And then after I put that album out, there was a lot of praise and there was a lot of like acceptance, but there was also kind of like, I also could realize like they're not gonna just fully accept this as the new jazz, you know what I mean? And that's
right,
not
right.
even necessarily what I'm trying to do, you know what I mean?
No,
But
no,
I think it was a little bit like, all right, well, let me just go as hard as I can possibly go, you know? And so when I
right,
made the next album, I think I'm good. It was more like, let me make the best sonic piece, and also like, let me make the strongest writing I can make, or the strongest, you know, I just tried to make something great, so that it wasn't really, the conversation wasn't so much about, well, what is this? Is this jazz? Is this hip hop? Is he mixing jazz and hip hop? And you know, that conversation was had so many times that I was like, how about let's switch the conversation to like, is this a great piece of work? Is this
right,
a classic, or is this a good album? You know,
yeah,
and hopefully that could like transcend the conversation to where it was like, who cares what it is this
yeah,
one of my favorite albums or not, you know? And
for sure,
so yeah, it was definitely, it took some courage, and it was
yeah,
also just a natural progression, you know, to
absolutely.
compete with myself and just try to be better, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Another one. I have a, you know, there's a lot of like visual artists, like we talk about times like we'll be doing something, whether it's understanding how to often like in like that we have like these breakthroughs. And sometimes it's like a visual breakthrough, like, oh, we understand like how we can see something our work needs, or like something accidentally happens. And we're like, oh, this is like the texture, this is the element that I needed in this visual piece. Or, oh, I started adding fabric to this, and it does something with the opacity of this, and boom, it's such a huge breakthrough. I know I've had them. I have plenty of other my friends have them, and they're like specific like things that happen, and then it ends up being like often it's a specific process or like a specific material or something that you add, and it just like takes that work to another level, which kind of just it makes it more mature, it makes it more challenging.
Yeah.
Um, it deepens the work. Does that happen? Has that happened for you as a musician?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's like what I'm looking for even, and
Right, right.
if I get bored, it might even have to come from somewhere else, like sometimes sometimes I get really into like video editing or figuring out some other thing that's kind of next to making music, but I might get more
Wow.
excited about that. And meanwhile, I should be making this next album, or I should be practicing the drums, but like sometimes it's also like finding that inspiration that you're talking about, So yeah, all the time, definitely.
Mm.
And there's also so many aspects to making, not just making music, but making a project or a body of work, an album. And so like one thing with the last album, I was a lot more involved in the mixing of the album and like making sure it sounded as good as possible, because
Right.
I wanted to make an album that could compete with some of my favorite mixed and mastered albums, which was like Doggy
Mm,
Style by Snoop and All Eyes on Me by Tupac, and then like the newer Kendrick records and things like that. I wanted something that was like avant-garde in a way, but also could come on after it and it would be the same kind of quality level. So sometimes the inspiration comes from just something next to it, but it's definitely, I think I changed the subject after your question.
no, 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 not at all. It's good. That's how it works. It's a flow.
uh I got something that's kind of related for you. Like there was something that popped in my head. Like we were talking on the phone like maybe 3-4 months ago, and you
Uh-huh.
mentioned the monuments pieces, right? And I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
when you were just starting to work on it, like before it even came out, before it dropped,
Hmm.
and you know, this stuff happened in society, you know what I mean? Like the monuments were coming down, and all all these things that used to be static were shifting, and things were being, becoming fluid and reworked and rediscovered. And I
Yeah,
almost forgot that you had did that. It was like, yo, you did that like well before all this popped off. You know what I mean? Like the
yeah.
you want to hop in?
Yes.
Well, I'll just to finish the thought, it was like I would, if you had to drop that right now, it would have been like, wow, that's incredible. And also like that makes sense, right? But for you to have done it back then, it was almost like you built up the energy and then the world went and reacted, you know what I mean? But I was just wondering,
Yeah.
like, how did you feel when you saw those statues coming down in real life, you know what I mean? I can't imagine, you know what I mean, after the work that you did and all the time you spent focusing on those, then to see them come down, did it feel like telepathy or something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, the thing is, giving due to like, I mean, I'm very late, in terms of doing, not late. That's just where my work happened to be at that time. Artists been making work about monuments for so long. So like, I just happened to do it. And I mean, I make work based on gauging like the temperature of like what's
Right.
happening, so I approached them to try to do enough to them to gauge like really where is the climate between people who want them and people who want them up and want them down.
Hmm.
So I engage with them in a way where, they still had this regalness to them, and they were still standing, and but they were wounded, you know.
Right.
The patterns were really beautiful on them and everything. Um, and I put a lot of care into them, but
Right.
they were wounded, and the colors, the colors as well were, they weren't like these colors of like destruction. It wasn't like sanguines and bloods, it wasn't that. But it was like, it was it was pleasing to look, but clearly they were wounded. There was, intestines coming out of the horses, um, areas looking like they're just being like, like almost worn away, but there were sharp edges to them. So when I saw that they came down, I mean, it was bound to happen. That's kind of like why I made them, because like, the temperature of things, it was, it was there, and they were. I just knew that was going to happen. That's the earliest one I did. That's the when I started. That was the earliest one I did in 2019, the end of 2019. Um, this is probably the second one I did. Um,
Wow.
so there's elements of them, just like the stone, kind of just being worn away, um, to let them be penetrable, essentially.
Quick
So then
question.
after I did,
Quick question, just to add to this that they're showing it. So you took
yeah,
you took a picture, you printed it
yeah, I
out,
went to Richmond, took the photos,
and then what did you do?
and then
Like,
I
getting it.
and then I printed it. Well, I put in Photoshop just to paint some areas black, white, print it, and then I sculpt into it, just with, it's all a single sheet of paper,
Hmm.
and then I just just sculpt into it in various ways, and then I add the ink after it. So the imagery, the imagery that I use, the language that I use is, very much in my, consciously, unconsciously, really just pulled from, inspired by the diagnostic lenses, MRI, CT scans, X-rays. It's that language. That's a language of like patterns and shapes, and just different tones of colors and different tones of grays, and but then there's a lot of like really bright colors in them as well, just to show the different information within, inside of the body. So yeah, so then after I did those ones, there was one more I did, and like it was actually this one. It was the Robert E. Lee one, and I took the whole entire monument like off the horse. It was like broken off and was laying on the ground, and the intestines were coming out of it. And that was after. That was like, I mean, I just did that in September, so that was just kind of like the continuation, just
Hmm.
continue to tell the story, but with the same material.
Yeah, that's heavy, and I think there's something interesting because you talk about a lot about you talk about caring for the piece of work, you know,
Yeah,
and I think that's an interesting thing to think about, like especially if you're dealing with something that you may find problematic, but still like it's almost like you can get deeper into it by rather than just say, ah, that's problematic, you know, just
exactly.
instead it's like, yo, that's problematic, but let me see what I can get out of this and get inside it and care for it and really like
Uh,
deal with it. You know what I mean? And I think
100%.
that's heavy.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from, being mixed, right? So I have to have these conversations with my family, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And it's like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna like not talk about them? Are you gonna be mad about them, or or are you gonna engage them? So, you gotta come at it in a way, try to bridge try to bridge something, so you can understand as much as how they see it, and you understand it your way, and teach one.
Right. Speaking of
Yeah.
family, my mom asked, that's my mom, Melissa Laird. She's a writer
What
and
up, mom?
she's working on a novel, her second novel right now.
Your
And
mom?
my mom is working on her
That's
second.
so amazing. My mom is here. She's working on a novel as well.
Oh man, they might need to have a Zoom, their own Zoom.
They got to. Got to, right? Let's know each other.
Yeah. So yeah, her first novel was called "Messing with God's Country," and so now she's writing another one. And her question
Wow.
was, "How do you know when a piece of art or music is finished?" I'm gonna let you. I talk to her all the time, so I'm gonna, I could tell
Okay.
the kitchen after this, so I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Okay. Yeah. I usually know even before now, since I've been, working on work for so long. I mean, not so long, but enough that I understand the language and I understand the feel that I'm going for. I understand how much of like the photo that I want it to be deducted. I understand, what I want to be visible and what I don't. So for the most part, it's just a understanding of for me it's understanding like the dance between the textures, in the work that I make. And it's not hard now. Like I know now. But I mean there's a but when I dive out and to do something, when I start to do something new,
Hmm.
um, if I'm starting to like you work with a whole bunch of colors or something, like when I started those monument pieces, that's
Hmm.
the first time I started working with a lot more color. So I had to let the work sit over like a period of, after I got like the majority of the work done, I started throwing some color in, throwing a little more, and then it's like, okay, and then I get stuck. So I just gotta let it sit for a day or two and
Yep.
then just keep going back to it, but so there's that. And then, also asking other people, others' opinions really helps as well.
Yeah. I There was actually two things just popped in my head. One thing I know, like, cause I'm a tweaker, like, I'm just constantly tweaking with the thing, and I know we
Right.
similar in that regard of
Absolutely.
micro editing and
Yeah.
one thing I notice is I tweak and tweak it, tweak it, tweak it, tweak it, and then when it gets to the point where anytime I change anything or add anything, it throws it off and it's not right, and it's almost like where you try out changing things, but it just doesn't help, or whatever. That's one of the
Right.
signs where I know I'm getting close. And then, like you said, to set it down, sometimes I'll get a thing and I'll think it's done, and then I'll leave for 30 days, and then I'll go and play it, and maybe I've learned a whole bunch of new stuff in that time off or whatever. Or I've been exposed to other things, and then I'll be like, oh, I gotta change this now because it's like I
Right.
lived some life and it gave me more insight to that piece or whatever. So time away,
Yeah.
time away is everything for sure.
Yeah. And the thing is, how I work, I don't really have a second chance to mess up because it's like you made that mark and that's kind of all it is. I can't like paint over it or anything.
Undo.
You know?
My Apple Z button is should be like broken at this point. Undo button is crazy around here.
And that's what's so cool. But that's what's so cool about sound. Like I said, when I started working on it, working with Ableton and the sound program, and then making my own sounds, it's like you can find that exact texture you want. You can literally find anything. You can find the exact thing that you're looking for.
Yep.
You can do that, and like you said, to the tiniest little edit. And I think that's like as time moves on, I think I'm like, because my work, the ideas, I'm more inspired by music than anything.
Uh-huh.
So I think like I'm working how I do, with paper and with that small boundary. I'm figuring out my sounds, I'm figuring out my sounds, and I'm giving myself patience to find what it is to have those tiny micro edits in texture and in visuality. Because the thing about my work is you can't it changes. It depends on where you are. Like it depends on how the light is it. When you walk past it, it changes. If you get closer, you can see a lot more, especially like these embossments and things I'm doing in it. So like music, sounds and textures move in and out. When you listen, you can control those things, throughout the whole track. but
Mhm.
you can easily make things go up and down, things sound louder, quieter, and I think because I love music so much, that's why I'm that's why I want to develop this language that try to find music in textures, really,
Right.
because I think music is so far ahead, and visual art is always going to be trying to catch up, with music. So
Well, I mean, maybe I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't. I wouldn't jump to agree with that. Say we're ahead, but I'll take it as a compliment. You know? But
sure.
I feel like I think his name. I think it's John Bryan. Um, he's like a composer, arranger dude. But I think he said something about musicians that can think like architects are like are really like they don't think about notes and rhythms specifically, but think about like frequencies and thinking about sound less as like music and more
Right.
as stuff without
Absolutely.
it's not predefined as like, oh, that's
Yeah,
in the key of whatever.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that's interesting to think about. And I
Yeah.
guess that's something like, I don't know, is that like a bit of unlearning you have to do to be able to do that?
Yes, it is. I mean, that's how we all start out, hopefully, in music. Sometimes you come into music and somebody is brainwashing you from the outset, like, giving you that like military understanding right from the beginning, and it can ruin it. But, I think
Yeah.
most people they have that experience early on where it's almost like a daydream. Like I remember when I was real young, I used to be messing around in the living room with instruments and stuff. But I would have these daydreams, and it was like I was performing on this big stage, and I was like a mix between Bob Marley and Michael Jackson, and I might not even known the difference of the two at the time, you know what I mean? But it was just
Mhm.
that energy, and it was like it's like a thought projection kind of, and that connection can get lost if you get too technical about like the mathematics of everything. But then at the same time, to really master your craft enough to create something that does feel transcendent, you also need to, get into
Of
the
course.
cerebral aspect, or you don't need to, but it helps, So
Help.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like you gotta dabble, but not get all the way taken over,
Right.
And oh, there was one other thing though. When you were talking about how you can always edit in music or you can fine tune,
Yeah.
there's another danger, which is
Mm,
like I know a lot of music makers and they have like thousands of plugins, thousands of software sounds, right?
mm,
And you can play any sound in the world on your keyboard.
right.
And but because they never commit, you know what I mean? It's like you're making a
Right.
thing, maybe I'll make this a harpsichord. Maybe we'll make it to a French horn. You know what I mean? And you keep
Right.
keeping it open and changeable. And but because that is possible, one of the things I often do is like when I really get something how I like it, I'll bounce it. I'll be like, that's it. That's the sound.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It's kind of like
yeah.
on the 4 track, you record it to tape and you bounce it down and it is what it is. And then you can't,
Right.
it's kind of like, crystallizing it like a work of art, to where it's like, all right, cool. This is at least like this. And let me add around it, so it's a wild balance of give and take, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. It seems yeah, like being restrictive is so important, you know?
Absolutely.
I think about, I love, the song you did with the with the Chopin track.
Uh-huh.
I know it's such a fine balance between between so you can just like let the song hold its essence still
Yeah.
without just like overworking it.
Yes, that's a whole nother can of worms. Is this that I've been thinking about lately, which is like if you have you know Juicy, Biggie, the Biggie song.
Yeah,
It's called
yeah.
Juicy. Yeah. So the original of that is Juicy Fruit by Umtume, right?
Oh wow.
And the original is basically like Puff Daddy at the time. Basically, they took like the hottest 30 seconds of that original and looped it, you know what I mean? And took another 15 seconds for the chorus or however you want to put it. And Biggie rapped on it. And
Oh
that one,
wow.
you know what I mean? Like if you hear the original, you'd be like, oh, man, I thought like a beat maker made that in the 90s, but it's just
Right, right,
a reframe, and
right.
so there's this idea of someone's, original intellectual property and sampling or somebody stole this or that, and there's their whole world of stuff that's connected to true somebody creating their original art, and then also the industry, and who owns this and who owns that. But like the you have Biggie's rap, right, which is Biggie's intellectual property, right? But then you have the person that had the idea to put Biggie on this song that was recorded in the 70s or whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like the person who had the idea to steal the other idea and put Biggie on it is an idea in and of itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's its could be its own intellectual property, and it's crazy. I've been thinking about that a lot because of I came up making beats, and our whole thing was to sample. And
Hmm.
it wasn't only because we couldn't play those chords ourselves, cuz I came up with jazz musicians, and it wasn't like we didn't have any musical information in us. It was also the concept of the reframe itself, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
Uh, I love that. I love that as a whole kind of world, you know what I mean? So that's the whole
Absolutely.
thing, man.
It's hard to do it right.
It is hard to do it right.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna ask. Oh yeah, I was curious. I'm always, I'm curious. What do you think? Do you think there's ways like do jazz musicians talk about ways and the fine arts and like music and like jazz musicians and music like coming together? Do y'all like express like, oh yeah, like we're curious what that is and what it is to be in that world and
Uh,
how we could be incorporated into it?
I think there's a lot of room for thinking about that. I'll put it like
Yeah,
that. People definitely think about it, and there are some musicians that think about it more than others. You know what I mean? Like
for
somebody
sure.
like Jason Moran comes to mind. It seems like he's always trying to figure out a way to coincide and reframe what he's creating within maybe another medium. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
But I think that another way of looking at it is like it might also just be a matter of mm, elevating and further developing the connections that are there. Like one thing about music is this might not be so much a jazz thing, but one thing about
Yeah.
music, like the first thing you do after you make some music is make a music video. You know what I mean? But the idea of the music
Right.
video has been so crystallized as this certain thing, and also this like industrial function for commerce. You know what I mean? It's like you make
Right.
some music and sell it with the music video. But I think like I think like what I'm trying to say is like maybe like that can kind of just become more of like less about a advertisement for the music and more about like a new collaboration. You know what I mean? And I was just watching the piece you did with the boxer,
Yeah.
and the thing about that piece was the thing that was really had me caught up was the rhythms. You know, like you had rhythm in the sound, but then you
Hmm.
had the rhythm of his,
Yeah, the movement,
and it was creating polyrhythms of, you know what I mean, the movement, and it
the
wasn't.
polyrhythms.
Yeah, yeah, it was creating like
Yeah.
it wasn't his movement wasn't it wasn't like he was doing the Macarena and it lined up, you know what I mean? He was
Right.
creating
Right.
the thing that made you go like, "Oh, man, this is
Right.
complicated." You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it actually reminded me a little bit of around the Yeezus era of Kanye's music videos. There were a
Hmm.
bunch of videos at the time that came out, and it was these kind of like animated like characters. It reminded me of that a little bit, you know what I mean? But I was just thinking like, man, Nate could probably do some fire like music video energy, you know what I mean? Or like
Yeah.
I even call it that specifically. You know what I mean? It's just like the forget the medium and forget like what is considered within the industry, but like
Right.
could we make something incredible under the guise of this or that? You know?
Right. Right. Yeah, that was my first video, you know. That was my first one, and I've never done a video, but I had a I like I said, when I haven't don't work with something and I don't understand all of the different elements of video, it's like I it's like let me start with a tight boundary, you know?
Uh-huh.
And like I said, I thrive in boundaries. So working with that tight boundary that I had, um, and that boundary was just essentially the arms, and the movement of different angles, finding, and that's that reframe,
Yeah.
finding these different angles, reframing. So boxing didn't look like it looked like something else. It could look like something else.
Uh-huh.
And then you add sounds to it. You add the sound to it, which completely changes what it is, what's happening, makes you think different about it. And then linking it with the rhythm and with music, things that I really understand and things I do, because I go out and I was shadow boxing every day at that time. So
Oh, word.
yeah, I mean I was boxing anyways, but like because I was specifically making that music video, I made sure I shadow boxed like it was like, just like almost every day for like 6, 7 months, so I could just like really, really get it inside me, really live it, and really, really be able to see these movements happen with me and understand how I'm gonna make that video. And I mean how I made the video was just like it was very much a musical thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much like a musical thing, very repetitive of just these patterns. And I just feel it. I just feel it. It's
Yeah,
just it's a feel.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, I could feel it too, man. I could it was like you could really you could feel the like the polyrhythm had a science to it that felt like
Right. Yeah.
life, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hold on, I got another question for I got another question. This is from Lauren. You are both artists of the moment who obliquely engage with political questions while avoiding the tired language slash imagery of political cliches. Is this something that you think about? Also, how do the concerns of our political present weigh on you as an artist? Hmm, that's a
Mm,
good question.
that is a good question.
Do you want me to start, or you want to
Yeah,
start?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, um, it's interesting because like when with the first part of it is like avoiding, like we obliquely engage with political questions. and avoiding
Yeah.
the tired language is like one thing about that is that like when I make a piece, right, whether something is kind of heavy or light or whatever, it's like it's usually it's not really like I try not to make it in a like propaganda kind of way. You know, like in a way where like I have these views and I have these things in life that I want to happen and I'm making this thing to like coerce the world to do these things. You know what I mean? Like I think about art, and I'm not saying this is the way anybody else should think about it. I'm just saying that this is the way that allows me to create. I think about art as this thing where it's like if you're making art, if you're making anything, if you're willing to get up on the stage and do your thing, then like I'm for you. You know what I mean? Even if I disagree with what you're saying, I might still be like, but I'm still like we're still family in this way. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
like when I make something that's kind of political, it's also because the reason it's kind of oblique is that I'm not really trying to be a political cat in this moment. I'm more so trying to say what I feel is the truth. And sometimes what I feel is the truth might have some kind of controversialness to it. You know what I mean? But it's like at the same time, I'm not trying to be the face of this or that. You know what I mean? Because the
Absolutely.
reality is something that I feel 6 months later, I might disagree with that thing. I might do some more research and be like, actually, I was wrong. You know what I mean? But sometimes in the political landscape, it's like you gotta say your view and you gotta campaign it and you gotta represent that, and you know what I mean? And as an artist, I'm more of like a living, breathing organism that changes. And so I guess maybe one of the reasons some of my stuff is a little oblique is that it's more like this is where I am now and I'm gonna keep growing and I'll let you know. You know what I mean? I don't know if that answers that, but that is something I think about. And I think that like the concerns of our political present definitely weighs on me as an artist. I think that it makes me want to take my time a little more. You know, I think that not only in politics, but in our social landscape, I think we're in a place of like see, react. You know what I mean? Like see thing happen, this my opinion. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Right. Right. Right.
see
Right.
thing, post with comment,
Right.
repost, comment. I strongly oppose. I strongly agree. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Absolutely.
because and because of that, I feel like see thing, let me see. We'll see. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna see, and I'm gonna let you know how I feel. But like, if there's a thing where it feels like there's pressure for you to say a thing, or there's pressure for you to give your, let's see what Nate has to say about it. Let's see where Kassa stands on it. If there's that pressure, then my stance is, don't pressure me. I'll let you know. You know what I mean? And so
Absolutely.
it's hard, man. It's hard for me right now because I really want to take my time and process things and make things that a year from now, 5 years from now, 100 years from now, 500 years from now, somebody can check it out and say, "Yo, have you heard of this cat? Like, look how he was writing about it in this way, and like this stood the test of time." Like like Lauren just read uh War and Peace and Crime and Punishment, right? And like,
Yeah.
but like obviously I haven't read those things yet. I plan to read them, but just from the conversations on it, it's like those books in relation to 2020, 2021 is a whole new conversation. And so you want to
Right.
make something that can give you food as time goes on. There's new food that comes out of it. Something like
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely.
short answer, long answer.
That was good. Um, yeah, yeah, I guess, how you engage, your language, with the political questions, um, while avoiding the tired language of it. I guess, I mean, for me, I know that comes from how, um, it comes from a place of, I mean, it's not necessarily understanding, but it comes from a place of knowing that, the opposite of my beliefs are beliefs held by many people. And, that's a fact. And
Mhm.
then, the beliefs that I hold are beliefs held by many people as well. Um, and, I engage people, not of my, particular thought, all the time. So, I can understand more, of things from the point of view and how they think about things. um it's more interesting for me to talk to them than people who think the way that I do, and just really try to engage them a way where i'm I'm asking them more questions than anything,
Right.
and try to get to what they're thinking about by asking them questions. So with that, it's like, well, who am I making my art for? Of course I'm making it for the general public. I'm making it for people who believe in ideas that I believe in, but I'm making it for people who don't necessarily believe in the ideas that I believe in. So I want that to, I hope I try to strike that visually and try to let that work, however, the decisions I make in it, have those decisions ask questions rather than say, this is it.
Hmm.
So that's why I, believe in that's why I like making, work that is, I guess, engaging. And, it ends up having a lot of different, a wide range of emotions, come from it. So I like to strike that place. And I think it's difficult to do that, like within political, visual art. Um, but it's just a lot of weighing and assessing, and I always take it to, taking care of people in the hospital, because you know the cameras, the assessment, everything comes from a place of, it comes from a place of assessment and understanding and showing. So I think of that, and I think about how I come at, ideas in my work and making decisions with what I show visible, what I do with this texture, how I make, this, how I bring out these different emotions through the different, work that I present. Um, but also, yeah, the concerns present. Um, you know, I guess like back when, like we went to quarantine and all that, like, with the virus and things, I was wanting to make work like that directly engaged what was happening, just because, I mean, I think partly it's just because, it's of my medical background, and just like, really taking it in a whole different way, just really understanding, what is happening, in so many ways. Um, and then, as time went on, it was just uh, it was just too much to keep engaging it, and I just had to step back a little bit and just kind of go back and forth with it. But
Right.
because like you said, it's like, you want it to unfold. You don't want to just like, just quick response, to something. I knew it was still unfolding. I knew it was going to be unfolding for a while, like as it is now. And it's nice to just let things simmer for a little bit, and just, I guess, more of the story to be told, really. So yeah, it can weigh when you're dealing directly with those ideas and you're reading about them and everything. It's just like,
Yeah.
you got to and then also you can let other things, you work on other work, you develop other language, um, you know, other ways of seeing that. Once you go back to that work can be even more powerful. So, You just got to be patient and let things bloom so that you can bring them around.
Word up.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
I'm getting the wrap up box. I think
Yes,
it's time. We
I'm gonna
might be
wrap it
time, but we was about to just start getting cooking. But I,
up.
uh, man, it's been great chopping it up, and also great, to be in a room with virtually with some folks and cats interacting and everything. So thanks,
Yeah.
thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you, Kassa. Thank you, Winter Jazz Fest. Winter Jazz Fest is it's my favorite music festival for real. It really is. So I'm super excited to be on the bill.
Yeah, your first jazz festival gig.
First gig, boom boom.
Yeah.
Last. Thank you both so much for this incredible conversation. You really just delved so much into what I was hoping you would talk about and so much more. So I'm so grateful to the two of you for really sharing and opening up those ideas and your experiences to us. Because of course, you could have went a whole different direction. So thank you so much.
Thank you for pulling me in for this too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the vision.
Um, And I think Bryce maybe wants to drop back in to remind you of what's coming up for the rest of the week. And again, you can actually look at the rest of the week's programs and the upcoming programs for the month on winterjazzfest.com. So again, tomorrow we'll be joining the Jazz and Contemporary Music Department at the New School and the Jazz and Gender Justice Institute at Berkeley College for an End to Norms with Terry Lynn Carrington, Maureen Mahon, Samora Pinder Hughes, and Faye Victor. It's going to be dope. I think you should join. On Friday, we'll have Marching On, which is produced in coordination with Summer Stage and Voices of a People's History of the United States. It's going to be an incredible program. You'll see my face again if you watch that. But you'll also see the incredible artists, Lakeisha Benjamin, Brandy Younger, Devin Mahal, C. Anthony Brown, and so many more. Why do I always say this? I'm so sorry. C. Anthony Bryant. I always do that. It's terrible. And thank you all so much again for joining us this evening and for sticking with us. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Peace.
Thank you.
And of course, stay safe. Super important.
Drink water.
Yes, drink water. Good night, everybody.
What's up, Ma?
That was good.
It was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Pico was trying to say hi to you, but I told him you probably couldn't see us.
Biko, what's up, big guy? What's happening, man? What you doing?
Do you want to see something? No, not right now, Pico. I'm
In a
talking
minute.
to
I'm
him,
gonna talk
so
to.
you
I'm
can
gonna
say
talk
hi.
to.
Huh? I'm talking to him. I know, but you're
No,